Like neon pythons, the lights coiled around the city's tallest towers, enveloping every corridor of steel and glass in a vibrant glow. Down below the congested streets and fluorescent storefronts, people jostled for space on the sidewalks, oblivious to the illusions unfolding in the corners of their vision. Everything seemed ordinary at first glance. Commuters clutching coffee cups, honking cars waiting impatiently for unwieldy transforms of traffic lights. But if one looked closely, perhaps in the reflection of an office building's polished windows, a veiled realm glimmered just beyond the mundane. This hidden world existed in the city's margins, suspended in the improbable hush of deserted alleys or behind obscure shop signs, whose letters seemed to shift shape when no one was watching. In the hush between flickers of the city's gaudy billboards was where she found his place. He was a courier, dressed in a run-of-the-mill black jacket and jeans, perpetually wreathed in an odor of stale coffee from the cafe where he briefly worked. Yet beneath his unassuming attire, Shay carried a secret. He was a mage watch, an expendable yet vital operative for the ancient society that called itself the Obsidian Eye. The Obsidian Eye, formed centuries ago in times long forgotten, existed to guard the delicate tapestry of magic from malicious forces. Most witches, wizards, and sorcerers who walked the midnight streets had heard rumors of them, but fewer than a handful had officially laid eyes on its sanctum. The group's secrecy was their fortress. Revealing themselves had once brought catastrophe. When the uninitiated discovered magic, fear and greed had followed in close step, threatening the very existence of enchantment itself. Shay maneuvered briskly along a side street one twilight evening, delivering what outwardly looked like a mundane package to a towering office building. In truth, the unremarkable cardboard box contained wards, small, carved crystals, inscribed with runes invisible to normal eyes. He had been tasked with installing these wards in strategic positions throughout the skyscraper. The building housed critical information that the Obsidian Eye wanted to protect from a nameless, shadowy organization rumored to meddle with forbidden sorcery. Shay's phone vibrated, the screen illuminating with a short message. Meet at 52nd floor, main elevator shaft. No signature, but he knew it meant that Cassia, another member who specialized in illusions, awaited him. Swallowing a knot of apprehension, he hopped the main elevator and prepared to climb deeper into the secret world he had barely begun to comprehend. Stepping off at the 52nd floor, Shay's senses picked up the faint hum of layered spells. The hallway's fluorescent lighting cast harsh yellow rectangles on the tiled floor. At first glance, it looked like a routine corporate workspace. A row of cubicles, glass offices, conference rooms with vacant chairs, but with his magically attuned eyes, Shay glimpsed shimmering lines that traced the hallway corners. These lines formed complicated wards designed to repel prying eyes and eavesdroppers. A subtle flicker ahead signaled Cassia's presence. She emerged from a semi-turnpoint illusion that disguised a whole section of the corridor. Her narrow features gave her a sharpness, but her voice had a soft, melodic lilt. "You're late," she teased with affected coolness. The wards in the cardboard box rattled. "We had a situation near the train station," Shay explained. "Some new threat. Controlling lesser demons, forcing me to take a longer route." Panic lurked in his voice. Unknown creatures had prowled the underground subway tracks, leaving frightened bystanders to wonder whether they had stumbled upon a stray dog or something more sinister. Without waiting for Cassia's reply, he procured the first crystal from the box. It was shaped like a small spine etched in swirling sigils. He pressed it against the corridor's wall while Cassia chanted softly, weaving the ward into place. The air shimmered, as though heat radiated from beneath thick glass, then subsided, leaving behind no visible indication. Yet both knew the ward was in place, an added layer of defense against infiltration. They progressed down the hallway, installing wards at each critical juncture. While Cassia performed the incantations that bound them to the structure, Shay's magic sense would guide him to the next site. It was meticulous, tedious work, like stitching an invisible cloak around the building's perimeter. Despite the repetition, Shay's thoughts drifted, recalling the swarm of rumors that whipped through the magical underbelly about a darkness stirring. The gloom took various names, depending on who recounted the tale. The Unseen Sovereign, the Nightshade Ruler, and, more recently, the Shatterer. All referred to the same indefinite entity, apparently adept at conjuring illusions so potent they made ordinary illusions seem benign. Some claimed this being could unravel spells from afar, while others insisted that it could command an army of abominations. The only certainty was how unsettled the city's magical community had grown. As they approached the final ward installation, Shay felt pressure build in his chest, the sensation of unseen eyes. He exchanged a glance with Cassia. She felt it too. The corridor's overhead lights dipped in brightness, creating the impression that something or someone had siphoned energy from the surroundings. Cassia's voice dropped to a tense whisper. "We're not alone." Without another word, she cast a quick illusion screen, a shimmering barrier that masked their presence. Moments later, a figure at the far end of the hallway came into view, tall and framed by the flickering lights. The man wore a dark, tailored suit, and his eyes shone with an unnatural gleam. His silhouette radiated a strange flicker of shadowy energy, reminiscent of black flames dancing on his outline. Shay and Cassia stood hidden behind the illusion screen, hearts pounding as the presence turned down a side corridor, vanishing from sight. It was a sign that the threat they feared had already infiltrated the building. Fear quickened their movements. They installed the last ward with trembling hands. Cassia signaled that they should leave the building the same way they came, but Shay disagreed. If the man in the suit was still close, the main elevator might be exactly where he lay in wait. Instead, they slipped into a storage closet that concealed a secret door to the building's old maintenance shaft. The Obsidian Eye had made arrangements over the decades to embed hidden exits in crucial locations. They navigated a cramped steel ladder that descended more than 20 floors, their footsteps echoing in a claustrophobic clang. At one point, Cassia nearly lost her grip, but Shay caught her, a swirl of adrenaline fueling his reflexes. Finally, they emerged into a deserted loading bay, breath ragged, pulses racing but mostly unseen by ordinary staff. Ducking out a back exit, they sprinted into the labyrinthine night of the city. Rain began to fall, adding to the gloom. Another message jittered onto Shay's phone. "Return to base. Deeper infiltration discovered." The address that followed was for a dingy commercial building near the outskirts, where the Obsidian Eye maintained a clandestine headquarters on the second and third floors. Minutes later, on a street glistening with rain-slick asphalt, they arrived at an unremarkable door marked with chipped gold numbering. Cassia used a thin wand to trace a circular pattern across the door's surface, and a muffled clunk signaled the release of multiple magical locks. A narrow staircase led to a foyer that looked more akin to a 19th century lounge than part of a modern office building. Polished mahogany paneling, antique tables, and intricately woven rugs adorned the space, each rich with centuries of hidden enchantments. They hurried past a row of portraits featuring stoic-faced figures said to be the founders or great leaders of the Obsidian Eye. Many had disappeared under mysterious circumstances, presumably after tangling with the same malignant forces that still threatened them. Cassia paused at a portrait of a white-haired woman with eyes the color of storm clouds. "Ariadne Voss," Cassia whispered. She was the last recorded mage to repel a colossal demon invasion almost 100 years ago. The wards she pioneered still protect half our safe houses. Her voice was hushed with reverence. Shay nodded, feeling a pang of insecurity. History was not his strong suit. He was a street survivor first, a mage second, and most of his knowledge had been gleaned from chance encounters and half-hidden manuscripts. Still, he respected the weight of the society's lineage. They made their way into a richly scented library where sprawled shelves brimmed with archaic tomes and locked grimoires. The drapes were drawn despite the late hour, ensuring no curious eyes spied from adjacent buildings. At the far end, perched behind a massive oak desk, sat Master Tiberius, one of the Obsidian Eye's senior guardians. He was a slender man with an aura of porcelain fragility. But beneath those thin hands lay the raw magical potency of half a lifetime dedicated to arcane defense. His voice was severe. "You encountered a presence, didn't you?" Shay exchanged a quick look with Cassia, then told Tiberius about the suited figure in the corridor and the oppressive weight that came with him. Tiberius steepled his fingers. "He's more than a random intruder. The infiltration is growing bolder by the day." Leaning forward, he drew up a small crystal sphere from his desk drawer and placed it atop a stack of thick parchments. "This orb captures magical signatures. Let me see if there's a match for the aura you encountered." As Shay and Cassia approached, Tiberius breathed an incantation. A swirl of spectral fog enveloped the sphere, forming an ever-shifting mosaic of lights and symbols. A black shape flashed, contorting into a jagged silhouette. Tiberius sighed. The Shatterer, or at least one of its acolytes. A story came tumbling forth from Tiberius's lips, weaving an account of a centuries-long battle. According to ancient records, the Shatterer arose after a catastrophic magical schism. Once an esteemed mage, it delved into black magic so profoundly that it transcended mortal limitations. The Shatterer had a singular, destructive aim: to rend reality itself and feed upon the energy unleashed. Each city, plagued with its presence, experienced a surge in nightmares, disappearances, and steadily growing chaos. Over the years, it had orchestrated an entire network of minions acolytes, who in exchange for unholy power became agents of destruction. Tiberius nodded toward a neglected corner of the library, where thick iron chains pinned down a towering grimoire bound in what looked uncomfortably like human skin. "This is the Fathom Codex. It contains references to an incantation that might banish the Shatterer, or at least weaken it enough for us to confine it. We must be cautious, however. The same incantation can create a rift if performed incorrectly." The seriousness of his tone weighed on Shay like an invisible anchor. Cassia looked resolute but deeply anxious. They recognized the predicament. The Shatterer sought to unravel the city's wards from within, using illusions to bypass defenses and sow confusion. If it succeeded, an onslaught of chaos would break forth, from feral magic surges to monstrous apparitions manifesting across the metropolis. Thousands of unsuspecting innocents would become collateral damage in a war nobody knew was being waged. Tiberius stood. "I need a team to gather the required components for this conjuration, those brave enough to traverse certain hazardous corners of magic." He turned to Shay and Cassia. "I trust you two. Gather allies. Find the relics listed in the Codex. Time is short." The night bled into early morning as they pored over ancient text, deciphering cryptic references. They gleaned that 5 relics were necessary for the banishing ritual. First, a shard of starlight, harvested from the fragment of a meteor housed in the city's museum archives. Second, a relic known as the Whispering Chalice, hidden in a disused cathedral, crumbling in the city's oldest district. The third was a scale from a draconic creature, rumored to reside in a heavily guarded realm beneath the city's water reservoir. The fourth, a tear from a sorrowful banshee that roamed the abandoned outskirts of a shipping port. The last, a tarnished coin minted in a destroyed kingdom centuries ago, rumored to rest in the possession of a powerful witch who demanded steep bargains. Each piece was a puzzle in itself, wrapped in layers of danger. They split the tasks. Shay and a fellow mage named Martin set off for the museum first, armed with illusions that would mask their presence among late-night security patrols. Meanwhile, Cassia joined Lady Eman, a skilled conjurer with an affinity for spirit entities, to negotiate for the Banshee's tier. Tiberius coordinated from headquarters, ready to teleport or send reinforcements if something went awry. Sneaking into the museum under the cover of illusions was relatively straightforward, thanks to Martin's knack for forging illusions to resemble official museum staff. They navigated hushed corridors lined with dinosaur skeletons and glittering jewels. The star fragment, Exhibit 304 was hidden behind layers of bulletproof glass and sensor arrays. However, these physical defenses, advanced as they were, proved less of an obstacle than the anti-theft wards the museum had, ironically, purchased. From a less reputable magic group, Martin tapped precisely into the ward's vulnerabilities while Shay skillfully used a localized time-step trick, slowing the sensor pulses to a near standstill. They extracted a sliver of the meteor, no larger than a fingernail, tucking it into a small lead-lined pouch. Quick as shadows, they faded into the night. Simultaneously, across the city in the old cathedral, Cassia and Lady Iman pushed open a creaking wooden door that had nearly warped shut from centuries of neglect. The interior was swathed in darkness, apart from the faint glow of votive candles, candles that had never been lit by human hands. Cassia felt a disquiet in the air, as though unspoken prayers reverberated off the stone arches. According to rumor, the whispering chalice had been sealed in a crypt beneath the cathedral floor. But the crypt was patrolled by the restless spirits of devout knights who perished in a war between the magical and the mundane. Every step they took echoed unnervingly. Using illusions that cloaked her presence, Cassia slipped by the wraith-like knights, a swirl of gloom drifting in their wake. Farther in, Lady Iman performed a short incantation to reveal a hidden compartment in the wall. The chalice materialized, an unassuming pewter cup etched in swirls of silver runes. Yet its aura sang with hushed voices, the residue of countless confessions. They cradled it as one might handle an injured bird, fearful of disturbing its fragile magic. It took the entire next day for Shay and Martin to visit the aquatic realm hidden beneath the city's main reservoir. Permits they carried were illusions, of course, granting them the guise of municipal workers. Traversing tunnels that reeked of mold and stagnant water, they ultimately reached a sealed iron grate, rumored to serve as a gateway to an underground domain. After reciting an archaic passphrase, the metal parted like a living creature. The subterranean lake shimmered with phosphorescent algae, revealing a luminescent environment that felt more alien than anything on the surface. They saw fleeting shapes in the water, culminating in the sudden emergence of a serpentine, dragon-like amphibian. Its liquid gaze was ancient, and it roared with a voice that reverberated through the tunnels. At first, they tried to offer it a portion of their mana in exchange for a single scale, yet the creature lashed out, untrusting of mortal intentions. In an adrenaline-fueled burst of numeric sigils, Martin formed a barrier. Shay calmed the being by projecting empathetic illusions of the city in crisis, images of devastation, fires, twisted shapes prowling the streets. Perhaps sensing the sincerity, the creature relented, dropping a single scale at their feet. By the time they emerged from the reservoir, they were drenched and spent, but far from done. That evening, Cassia and Lady Iman trekked to the shipping port. Rusted cargo containers, stacked in labyrinthine patterns, created an abandoned cityscape within the city. Reports claimed a banshee roamed there, lamenting some forgotten sorrow. They found her at a corroded dock, echoing her unnerving wail across the water. She was translucent, her hair trailing like tattered cobwebs in the wind. Coaxing a tear from a banshee required empathy. She had to willingly shed it. Lady Iman spoke softly about betrayal, loss, the heartbreak that could unite spirits and mortals. Cassia used illusions to reenact moments of solace, flickers of compassion that might soothe even a tortured soul. The banshee's laments softened. A single luminescent tear slipped from her spectral eye, drifting through the air to land in a special crystal vial. By the time Cassia and Lady Iman returned to headquarters, the tear glinted faintly, pulsing like a token of the sorrow from the other side. The final relic proved the most elusive. A tarnished coin, minted in a kingdom that collapsed centuries ago. Only one rumor had it in the possession of an old hedge witch who lived far from the city lights, in a patch of forest that had been claimed by urban sprawl, but never fully tamed. Shay and Cassia ventured there. The witch's dwelling was a lopsided cottage nestled among ivy-choked rubble, guarded by glowing mushrooms and living shadows. She waited for their approach, perched on a wooden stump, surrounded by crooked totems. With a wry smile, the witch demanded unfair trade. "You want my coin? Then give me something precious in return. A memory, perhaps, or a slice of your destiny, time cut from your threads, something of real value." Cassia exchanged a hesitant glance with Shay. They knew the price of dealing with witches. With a trembling breath, Cassia offered the memory of her first genuine friendship, a recollection so dear she felt tears prick at her eyes. The witch's gaze sharpened. She raised a withered hand, and Cassia's expression glazed over momentarily. Then, as though completing a contract, the witch flicked a blackened coin from her sleeve into Shay's outstretched palm. The relic shimmered with the weight of 1,000 curses. Mission accomplished, though Cassia left with a hollow space in her heart where that memory once resided. Reunited at the Obsidian Eye's headquarters, they laid out each relic on a massive oak table draped with a velvet cloth. Tiberius and the other senior guardians arranged them precisely, referencing the Fathom Codex's archaic instructions. Torch-like sconces glowed with rainbow-hued flames, lighting the draped library in mystical brilliance. Orbs of energy swirled overhead, weaving geometric shapes that pulsed in unison with the chanting. The novices and acolytes joined, forming a harmonic resonance. As each relic was lifted in turn, the combined magical force crackled throughout the room, creating winds that rattled the shelves. Then, a violent tremor tore through the building. Books toppled, candlesticks clanged onto the floor, and windows shattered under the pressure. The intangible presence of the Shatterer materialized in the chamber, twisting shadows that hammered against the incomplete ritual. A thunderous voice reverberated within every skull. "You dare try to seal me away!" The swirling illusions contorted into spectral beasts. The chanting faltered as acolytes fell to their knees, battered by the psychic rage. Yet Tiberius refused to yield. He clutched the codex in trembling hands and continued mumbling the incantation, voice cracked but resolute. Sensing the precariousness of the battle, Shay and Cassia sprang into action. Cassia conjured an illusion screen around Tiberius to fend off the swirling monstrosities. Shay, summoning threads of dimensional magic, attempted to ground the Shatterer's presence. The wards, etched into the building's very foundation, glimmered as they waged war against a primal darkness that threatened to engulf everything. The relics, each shining or vibrating with its own aura, began aligning in a sacred pattern. A luminescent circle blossomed beneath them, forcing back the Shatterer's form. Inch by inch, the monstrous energy receded, pinned by the synergy of ancient magic and unwavering resolve. A final crescendo of the ritual's incantation rippled through the air, culminating in a flash of white-hot brilliance. When the glare subsided, the Shatterer's swirling darkness had vanished from the library. For an excruciating moment, the entire room remained silent, as though the universe held its breath. Then a soft hum resonated from the relics, confirming that the banishing spell had taken hold. Shay sank to the floor, sweat-soaked and panting. Cassia knelt beside him, her illusions dissipating in gentle shards of light. Tiberius cradled the codex in exhausted arms, eyes brimming with relief. Yet they knew their work was not finished. Though the Shatterer's power had been forced out of the city for the moment, it was not destroyed. In all probability, the entity would seek another foothold somewhere else. That was the nature of ancient evils, to bide time, to probe for weaknesses, to exploit fear. The Obsidian Eye continued to stand as an unassuming fortress of watchful readiness. And, though each member had paid a different cost, lost memories, drained mana, cuts and bruises, and battered souls, they had managed to preserve their city's fragile peace. Master Tiberius addressed them all in a hushed voice, echoing through the library's damaged grandeur. "We have only stymied this menace. Rest, recover your strength, but do not become complacent. As we have seen, darkness often wears the face of luxury and power, weaving itself into every aspect of modern life. There will always be another threat, another infiltration. Our duty is to remain vigilant, to guard the gates of reality against those who would corrupt it. No one contradicted him. As the group surveyed the chaos of toppled books, cracked windows, and scattered relics, a simultaneous sense of exhaustion and triumph filled the chamber. In the hush that followed, the city churned on outside. Traffic lights glowed red and green. Taxis honked. Street vendors sold late-night skewers. The unsuspecting population continued in its daily life, shielded from horrors they may never know. And somewhere, beyond the skyline's illuminated towers, in the corners where shadows gathered, new conspiracies stirred. For the Obsidian Eye there was no end, only the next night, the next secret war. This was the weight they carried, the burden of the forbidden Arcana that must remain hidden if the world was to remain safe. They each retired to separate corners of the battered headquarters, seeking precious moments of rest and introspection. Cassia held the tarnished coin, remembering the price she had paid. Shay gazed at the luminous wards etched into the walls, humbled by the powers he had witnessed. Neither doubted that they would be summoned again soon. A hush descended upon the city's magical guardians, partially invigorating them for future dangers. Unbeknownst to the crowd below, the secret society of magicians among the skyscrapers had once again averted a catastrophe that could have consumed everyone. They had wrestled with shadows and emerged steadfast, each scar a testament to their resolve. Though the night was calm now, the Watchers knew better than to think it would last forever. Shadows, after all, crept in when the lights blazed the brightest. And so they remained silent, watchful, and ready.